Hello everybody, welcome to this final video game analysis of 2013. We're just going to be more next summer. But until then, I thought we'd close off strong with Pokemon. As you know, I'm a big Pokemon fan, I mean that's pretty clear, and we've talked about Pokemon a couple times in the past, so why not talk about it again? Today I want to talk about something not many people put a lot of thought into, which, I mean, this isn't an official timeline and all, whoops, gave away what I was going to say, but it's still something that's in the back of people's minds. I mean, I understand why. It's not the most interesting thing in the world. I mean, who really cares about the Pokemon timeline? But I just thought it'd be something worth to flesh out a little more and maybe get some gears rolling, you know. So let's just start with a little introduction thing. The world of Pokemon. You know, I mean, I probably go on and on about this as time goes on. Especially with my Let's Play on Pokemon Red, which is a lot of fun. But basically, people don't, people always try to piece together Zelda's timeline or Kingdom Hearts timeline, but no one ever really thinks about Pokemon's timeline. I mean, I know it doesn't really matter that much, but ultimately, it's something to think about. And this, unlike the two previous franchises I mentioned, Pokemon does have a official timeline. And with that, it's like, why not just talk about it for a little bit? Because you have all these different trainers you play as in the past, and with all that, it's like, why not explore into it a little more? You see, Pokemon was actually supposed to end the second gen, which I'll explain a little more later. But, you know, with the expansions of Pokemon, it was clear that they couldn't stop there, especially with the fandom it created. Pokemon, as I said in a past episode of the Video Game Analysis Board, became one of the biggest things in the world, and nothing like Pokemon will ever be that popular again. When it first came out, it was so popular, I forget which country it was, but there was actually a country that made legal tender with Pokemon on it. Coins with, I think, Meowth, Bulbasaur, Pikachu, Charmander, and Squirtle. It's something to marvel at on how popular this became. The marketing was just brilliant, basically. And with that, you know, why there are only two games? I mean, would it be better that way? It depends. It is a debate. It's like arguing if a show should end or something. I mean, personally, I'm on the side that they should just keep going. Everyone should enjoy Pokemon in their life, but, you know, and in the end of the day, it is what it is, and let's just talk about the timeline itself. So, before we go into any big things about it, I just want to get a little more, just a little piece together. I mean, we'll just take a little piece together on why a timeline would even matter for Pokemon. It's really more of an organization thing for Game Freak itself. Game Freak just had to, with their need to continue the Pokemon series because of its mass popularity, it's just something they had to think about. It's Gen 3 and Gen 4 are really a reboot of a whole new Pokemon series. And in order for it to make sense, well, I'll explain it here. So basically, there's a reason why Gen 1 had Gen 3 had a Gen 1 remake, and Gen 4 had a Gen 2 remake going on at the same time. You see, Pokemon Gen 1 and 2 were supposed to be the only two games in the series, which is why they were so connected, literally, with the maps. And Gen 2 had a great ending with defeating the Gen 1 trainer, making a great conclusion to the franchise. But with Pokemon getting bigger and bigger and more popular, it was clear that they had to make new games and changes to the series as time went on. So, with Gen 1 and Gen 2, the story also had, going underneath it, Gen 3 and Gen 4. So yes, there actually was a reasoning behind the remakes, other than just remaking them. Well, there was a couple more reasons why they made the remakes. It was also because of the fact that the Gen 1 remakes were, well, with being that the Game Boy and the Game Boy Color and the Game Boy Advance games were pretty iffy on trading, they just felt it was easier to put Kanto Pokemon, Hoenn Pokemon, and whatnot together. Also, it was for newcomers, because at this time, with the reboot, they felt newcomers would be very iffy on what to do, and there wasn't a lot to say about on how to explain these things. So The Gen 1 remake was a great way for a fresh start. But more really, it was because of the timeline itself. With the idea of the Gen 1 and Gen 2 being the end of the series, they wanted to continue it in a more fleshed out way, but without being too confusing, they took Gen 3 and 4 and shifted them right underneath Gen 1 and 2. That way they can continue later on they just continued the series. Gen 5 became the first gen to have a direct sequel, and now we're having Gen 6, the first 3D handheld Pokemon game. Main series, I don't know if there's a another 3D handheld game to my knowledge. I don't think there is. But it does beg the question though, will there be a Gen 3 remake? It is something people want. I wouldn't mind it either. I mean, I don't really care, to be honest. Um, I mean, my Gen 3 still works. I mean, what made Heart Gold and Soul Silver such a great idea for me before I knew of the timeline was the fact that it was my silver battery ran dry, and I can replace it, and I've helped people do that, and I know people who do replace the batteries for save states, but I basically am just happy that the DS remake existed because of not having to worry about ruining my cartridge. So generally, the reason being behind the remakes was the timeline. Is there going to be a Gen 3 remake? I highly doubt it because of Game Freak's decision to make the remakes was because of the timeline itself. And putting Gen 3 would just really fudge up the timeline. Even though, granted, people really don't care about the timeline, but I don't know. Game Freak, whatever they want to do, if they want to stick to their guns on this, or they just want to make a couple extra bucks with the Gen 3 remake, it's up to them. So there were a lot of hinting on Gen 1 and Gen 3 within the remakes of how Gen 1, 3, and 2 and 4 are connected. Well, you see, it's pretty clear, based on what they did to the games in the remakes. Firstly, you have to understand that what happens is, I'm going to explain it all right now. Gen 1 and Gen 3 happened at the same time, within two different regions. And then what happened was, 3 years later, the events of 2 and 4 happened at the same time. In which, I'm not sure how many years are between 4 and 5, but I believe it's 5 or 2 to 5 years around there. That's when the events of that happened. 2 years later, Black and White 2 happened. And it's not very certain on when Gen 6 will happen. That is how it works in the main series. I think the Coliseum series is also linked in there somehow, but I only wanted to focus on the main handheld titles. Gen 1 and Gen 3's biggest proof of their connection is both the SS Anne being the abandoned ship in Gen 3, and more importantly, the after game in Gen 1, where you must collect a ruby and a sapphire to power a machine that connects Bill's PC in Gen 1 to Annette's PC in Gen 3. Which was really cool. I think it was something that Game Freak originally wanted to do in the Game Boy Color game, but they didn't have time to do it. Which was an interesting idea, but it wouldn't have been the same if they did, because of Gen 3's existence. Gen 2 and 4 is a little more clear, right in the story. The first thing you can see is the news article about the Red Gyarados, and there are a lot of NPCs in the game, especially important characters, that have actually been to Johto and mentioned Johtos in the events that happened in Gen 2. So that's pretty cool, and it's a very creative way to show how to correct the timeline. So generally, we have the idea here is Pokemon timeline is not complicated. It was just something to keep the actual franchise going for Game Freak, and you know what? It's been a long time now. I've grown up with this my whole life, and it's still going strong. There were some downsides. I mean, it's not nearly as popular as it was back then, but generally, it's a ride, and X and Y is something I'm very excited for. So I can't wait to play that at the end of the year. I don't know about you, but hopefully we'll see when we get there. So thank you guys for another great season. This has been a lot of fun. I love doing doing this new formula here. This room here will change. I just had some basically my basement was completely wiped out due to Hurricane Sandy, but that's the past. There was a lot of work put in my basement. It's done now. It's been redone, so we'll be in a more spacious room do new things. But basically, the formula will stay the same and as this year because I really like how it worked out. And that's my feelings on this. Thank you guys for joining me. Thank you guys for always being there, you know. I guess I'll do this is the part where I hint at what I'm doing for the first episode of the next season. Well, I'll just be blatantly obvious about this one. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next year.